There were mornings when Ethan would wake without remembering falling asleep, the days blurring into a slow drip of time. Gray, quiet, and vaguely sour, like the inside of a refrigerator that hadn't been cleaned in years. He lived on the 9th floor of a peeling building with elevators that never worked and neighbors he had never seen. His dog, Bowie, had been the only constant, the only soul that didn't drift away. Bowie was old now, slow in the hips, his once vibrant coat dulled by time. He still followed Ethan from room to room, never more than a few steps behind, his cloudy eyes blinking as if trying to make sense of the walls closing in around them. There was a tension in the air that even the dog felt. The letter came on a Tuesday. There had been no knock, no ring, just a brittle envelope on the floor, slipped under the door like something trying not to be noticed. Yellowed with age, sealed with a waxy red blot that looked disturbingly like dried blood. Ethan stared at it for some time, a pressure building in the pit of his stomach, before finally tearing it open with numb fingers. The contents were brief, handwritten in a tight cursive that felt too deliberate to be natural. To Ethan R. Mallory, this letter serves as formal notification of the passing of Eleanor Vance, your maternal great-aunt. Per her last will and testament, you have been named sole heir to her property, located in the township of Black Hollow, county of Dunvale. You are encouraged to arrange for evaluation or possession within 30 days of receipt. May she rest in peace. He read it again and again. Eleanor. The name stirred something faint, a scent maybe, or a dream from childhood, but nothing solid. When he called his mother, her voice had been flat, mechanical. She was strange. We didn't talk. That part of the family, they were different. His mother offered no further explanation, no emotion, just silence. 2 days later, Ethan packed what little he had into the trunk of his rust-bitten sedan, loaded Bowie into the passenger seat, and drove. The city slipped behind them like a dying thing, coughing its last smog-choked breath as they entered the winding arteries of rural nowhere. The further they drove, the less real everything felt. Gas stations became less frequent. Cell service vanished. Trees leaned too close to the road like they were eavesdropping. Bowie began to whine, softly at first, then more urgently. When the sign for Black Hollow, 12 miles, appeared in the headlight wash. By the time they arrived, the sun had vanished. Black Hollow wasn't marked on any map Ethan had seen. The village had no central square, just a looping gravel road that curved between decaying cottages and small fenced fields. No one stood outside. No one waved. Windows flickered with faint light, then darkened as he passed. The house was at the far end of the village, where the road disappeared into thick woods. It stood hunched beneath gnarled branches, a crooked structure with a steep roof and boarded windows, like it was trying to disappear into itself. The gate creaked open on its own. Bowie barked once, low and uncertain. Inside, the air was dense with age. Everything smelled of mothballs, mildew, and something harder to name. Something metallic, like blood that had dried long ago and never been cleaned. Furniture sat shrouded in yellowed sheets, wallpaper peeled in long curls. A large mirror in the hallway stood untouched by dust, its glass unnaturally clear. That night, Ethan lay on a musty mattress in the second-floor bedroom while Bowie circled the floor, unable to settle. The wind moved strangely through the trees, carrying with it a faint sound. Not quite whispering, not quite wind. Sleep came eventually, but it was brittle and short. He woke sometime after midnight, heart pounding, the dark pressing against him like water. From the hallway came a sound, sharp, deliberate, like nails on wood. Bowie growled. They weren't alone. The mornings in Black Hollow did not begin so much as they faded into being. There was no sunrise through the trees, only the gradual bleaching of darkness, as though the world had simply grown tired of the night but hadn't the strength to push it back fully. Ethan stood in the kitchen of the old house, staring out a grime-fogged window. Outside, the trees leaned toward the structure like eavesdropping strangers. Inside, the air felt unchanged, stale, dry and stained with the scent of something faintly rotting beneath the floorboards. He hadn't slept. Not truly. The night before replayed in his mind with dull clarity. The sound, the growl, the heaviness pressing against the dark. He told himself it had been nothing. A creaking board, the house settling, a dream half remembered. But something in Bowie had changed too. He stood now by the front door, tail low, ears back, staring at nothing. Still. Silent. Ethan pulled on his coat. The air outside was colder than it should have been. His breath came out in clouds that vanished too quickly. He decided to walk into the village. The road into town was unpaved, the gravel crunching beneath his boots like dry bones. No cars, no lights, no movement. The village looked like it had been forgotten by time. Wooden houses leaned in strange directions, as though trying to pull away from something. Most windows were dark, but a few had the hazy glow of oil lamps. Curtains twitched when he passed. He found the general store open, dimly lit by a single bulb that hummed too loudly. A woman behind the counter, face pale, hands veiny and unmoving, said nothing, just stared. Ethan bought canned goods, a flashlight, matches. She never looked him in the eye. When he asked if there was a hardware store, her mouth opened slightly, but no words came. He left without waiting. Next was the bar, the only building in town that looked relatively intact. It sat low to the ground, squat and windowless, like a bunker meant to withstand something inevitable. Inside, a few men sat hunched over cloudy glasses. A radio played softly in the corner, the same warped country tune again and again, like it was stuck in a groove. He sat and ordered whiskey, drank it slowly. When he mentioned the house, Eleanor Vance's place out by the woods, the bartender froze for a moment before replacing Ethan's empty glass with another. No charge. Later, as the shadows inside the bar thickened, a man sitting nearby mumbled something without looking up. Should have burned that place years ago. Too late now. Ethan turned. What do you mean? The man's eyes were bloodshot, his skin mottled and waxy. He said nothing more. When Ethan pressed, the bartender shook his head once, slow and final. Don't speak of things you want to stay asleep. The ride back to the house felt longer. Trees closed in tighter than before. The road behind him seemed to vanish in the rear view. That night, Bowie refused to enter the upstairs bedroom. He lay at the foot of the stairs, staring upward, ears twitching. Ethan tried to coax him, then gave up. He lay in bed again, eyes open, watching the ceiling. The mirror in the hallway had changed. Before, it had only reflected the hallway. Simple, dustless. But now, as Ethan passed it to fetch water, he caught something in the corner of his eye. A shape standing behind him. He turned. Nothing. But in the glass, something lingered. A woman. Pale. Lips stitched shut with black thread. She was smiling. He threw a blanket over the mirror and didn't look at it again. Dreams took him again that night. He was running, fast, low to the ground. The world passed by in streaks of gray and brown. He could smell the earth, the rot of leaves, the rust of blood. Something ran beside him, not Bowie. Bigger, faster. It whispered without a voice, and he understood it. It said, "The skin remembers, the bones remember." He woke to the sound of scratching. Bowie was gone. The front door hung open, swinging gently in the wind. The third morning came without light. Not in the metaphorical sense. There was daylight, technically, but it was colorless, drained of contrast, like someone had turned down the saturation of the world itself. Ethan stood on the porch, staring at the dirt path Bowie had taken the night before. Leaves stirred without wind. Nothing moved. No birds. No insects. Not even the sound of trees. The silence was unnatural. He searched for hours. He wandered into the woods that surrounded the house like a fortress. His calls for Bowie echoed strangely, bouncing back to him warped as if someone else, something else, had heard and was trying to imitate. The branches creaked with weight that didn't belong to the wind. He found tracks, clawed, deep impressions in the soil. But they were too large, too symmetrical. They circled, doubled back, led him nowhere. At one point, he came across a tree with long scratches up the trunk, high, higher than any animal should reach. Bits of fur clung to the bark, and they weren't Bowie's. The smell that wafted from the gashes was sour and coppery. Ethan staggered back, suddenly aware of how alone he truly was. He turned homeward, but even that word, home, felt wrong in his mind now. The house wasn't comfort, it was a threshold. Something was waiting. The days bled together. He stopped opening the curtains. The outside world felt staged, like a set beyond which only emptiness waited. He dreamt of Eleanor now. She stood in the woods, barefoot, staring at him with hollow eyes. Her mouth stitched shut, her arms open, whispering through the seams in her lips. He couldn't understand the words, but he understood the intent. She wasn't warning him. She was inviting him. 3 days after Bowie vanished, he came back. Ethan heard the scratching first, Soft, persistent. It wasn't frantic. It was patient. When he opened the door, Bowie was sitting there, silent, tail still. Relief hit him so hard he almost collapsed. He fell to his knees, wrapped his arms around the dog's thick neck. Bowie didn't move, didn't lick him, didn't even wag. Just stood there, staring. That night, Ethan noticed the first change. Bowie didn't sleep. He stood at the window for hours, unmoving as though watching something only he could see. When Ethan finally drifted into sleep, he awoke to find Bowie standing beside the bed, inches from his face. Eyes wide open, breathing slow. Too slow. Ethan stared back. Bowie blinked once, and then walked out of the room. Over the following days, Ethan felt his grip loosen. The walls of reality, soft at first, began to fold in strange ways. He would turn off the lights and find them back on. He'd wake to find muddy paw prints on the hallway floor, leading in a circle that ended beneath the mirror. Food disappeared from the fridge, but he didn't eat. He didn't remember eating at all. He tried to call for help, but his phone only played a clicking sound when he dialed, like teeth chattering in the cold. And Bowie, or what wore his shape, began to mimic. Sometimes Ethan heard it whispering, not barking, not growling, whispering in a low, rattling voice. It used words now, words he hadn't taught. Good boy. Let me in. You remember. He caught his reflection speaking on its own one night. He had stood before the bathroom mirror, blinking back exhaustion when the glass version of him turned its head slightly and smiled, just enough to show teeth. A voice, not his own, echoed in his skull. She fed us. You're just like her. Ethan shattered the mirror with his bare hands. Didn't feel a thing. One morning, he found a dead deer laid out neatly on the front porch. Its spine had been removed. Plucked, not broken. The body was otherwise untouched. Bowie sat beside it, tail curled, tongue lolling, grinning. When Ethan tried to move the carcass, Bowie growled, low, deep, and for the first time since he'd returned, his eyes shimmered, not with the cloudy haze of age, but with something else. A brightness, a knowing, a hunger. That night, Ethan locked his bedroom door. He stuffed a chair beneath the handle, pushed a dresser in front of it. He fell asleep to the sound of nails clicking on the hallway floor, back and forth, for hours. But when he woke, the door was open, and Bowie was inside, sitting, watching, smiling. It began with the voice. At first, it was just a sound in the walls, a scratching, a rhythm, a hush. Then it began to form syllables, not full words, not yet, but they were shaped like human sounds, tongue on teeth, breath over lips. One morning, Ethan awoke to the sound of his own voice saying, come outside. But his mouth hadn't moved. He sat up in bed, breath shallow. The room was cold. The window was open. He hadn't opened it. Bowie lay in the hallway, but not like a dog. He was upright, body still canine, but head tilted, just slightly wrong, like the angle of a doll left too long in the sun. His eyes were fixed on Ethan, wide and unblinking. And then the thing smiled. Not a dog's grin, not submission, not warmth. It was deliberate, human. Ethan stopped sleeping. He began nailing shut doors, boarded the hallway mirror behind layers of rotting wood, tore out the circuit breakers after the lights flickered on and off one too many times in rhythm with his thoughts. But somehow the house remained alive. The pipes groaned words in the night. The floorboards rearranged their creaks into phrases. His name would whisper from inside the walls. Sometimes it was his mother's voice. Sometimes Eleanor's. Sometimes his own. He stopped eating, or maybe he just forgot to. He couldn't remember the last time he felt hungry. His body moved sluggishly. The mirror in the bathroom showed a man growing thinner, his skin pulled tighter across the bones, his eyes darkening, as though something inside was pulling inward. But sometimes the reflection still smiled. Even when he didn't, he found bones in the crawl space. Dozens, stacked in ritual spirals, each one wrapped in strips of fabric. Some were clearly animal, others weren't. Some still had hair, others bore scratches in the shape of glyphs, not made by teeth, not made by any tool he recognized. He dug until his fingers bled, until he hit wood, not part of the house, but a buried, rotting chest. He pried it open. Inside was a collection of objects, a cracked mirror, a bundle of human teeth, a photograph of a girl whose face was blurred, as though it had been smudged from within the film. A brittle page. On that page, a hand-drawn diagram of a man and a beast wearing each other's skins. The words, "To become, you must unmake." He burned the page that night, but the image stayed. Bowie, or the thing wearing him, began to speak clearly, in full sentences, mocking ones. "You look tired. She thought she could bind us. You've already let me in. It's warmer inside skin." Its voice was still a dog's bark, distorted by vocal cords not meant for human language. But the words were there, buried in the growl, stitched into the breath. Sometimes it spoke with Eleanor's voice, sometimes with his own. One night, Ethan heard movement downstairs. He crept from the bedroom with a rusted crowbar in his hand. The house felt larger, the hallway longer, the ceiling lower, the walls closing in. He turned the corner into the living room and saw it. Bowie, but not entirely. It stood on its hind legs, still covered in fur but stretched, misshapen. The front legs had changed. Hands now, half-formed, fingers twitching like something learning how to hold, how to grab, how to tear. The mouth opened in a low, unnatural breath. It turned its head slowly, too slowly, and then it spoke. You remember the woods. You remember what she showed you. You were always going to join us. Ethan ran, but the house did not let him out. The door he opened led to another hallway, and another, and another, each one lined with mirrors, each one filled with reflections that weren't quite right. In one of them, he was smiling. In another, he had no face. In another, he was Bowie, and Bowie was him. When Ethan finally collapsed on the floor, panting, bloody, exhausted, the thing approached slowly, calm, patient. It curled beside him like a loyal dog. Its head rested on his shoulder. Its breath was warm. It's quieter when you stop fighting, it whispered. Ethan wept, and the thing licked the tears from his cheek, tender, almost gentle, almost. The wind was colder than they expected. Even for late autumn, even for this part of the country. The truck crawled into the village like something foreign, tires groaning against gravel roads, headlights slicing through the early morning fog. Two figures sat inside, Henry and Liza, Ethan's distant cousins, summoned by silence, by weeks of unanswered calls and messages. At first, they weren't worried. Ethan always kept to himself. But after a month, Henry had insisted they drive out. It's just a few days, he had said. We'll check on him, make sure he's okay. Maybe it's the damn signal in that place. But the moment they entered the village, dread wrapped around their chests like frostbitten hands. The locals stared, but not with curiosity, with pity, with fear. No one would speak. No one met their eyes. The bartender, the only one willing to even gesture at a map, muttered, "House at the end." No one goes there. Not since the things came back. He wouldn't elaborate. The house stood alone, just as Ethan had described in those first texts. Rotting, quiet, nestled at the edge of the forest, as if something had tried to drag it back into the trees but gave up halfway. The windows were covered from the inside with boards. The door hung slightly ajar. They stepped inside. The smell hit them first. Rot. Wet wood. Something. Animal. Inside, time had collapsed. Furniture was overturned. Black mold veined the walls like necrotic arteries. Scrawled symbols, scratches, markings covered the hallway, carved deep into plaster and door frames. Some looked fresh, some were bleeding. The air was colder inside than out. Ethan. Liza's voice barely stirred the silence. It was too thick, too present, no response. Only the sound of the wind outside. No sign of a dog, no sign of a man. In the bedroom, they found the first real trace of him. Not Ethan, just his journal. Pages torn, entries scrawled in what looked like both pen and something else. Something darker. something dry. It's not Bowie. It wears him. It speaks in voices I remember. The house won't let me go. There's something under my skin. I think it's learning how to move my face. Henry stopped reading after that. They searched the house, room by room. In the basement, they found claw marks in the walls. In the attic, a crude shrine of bones, canine and human, arranged in spirals around a moldy photo of an old woman. The name Eleanor was written on the back, over and over, scratched into the paper until it tore. Still, no Ethan. At dusk, Liza wandered outside, drawn by a sound, not quite barking, not quite human. A voice, low, rasping, familiar. It came from the woods. She stepped into the tree line. The shadows clung to her boots, branches bent without wind. And then, something stepped out. A dog, large, matted fur, dirty, exhausted looking. It stared at her from a distance, unmoving. But the eyes, they weren't Bowie's. They were Ethan's. She fell to her knees, whispering his name. The thing tilted its head, and then it opened its mouth and smiled. Henry found her an hour later, still kneeling in the woods, unmoving, blank, her eyes wide and distant, locked on nothing. She wouldn't speak, not then, not ever again. The authorities found no bodies, no clear signs of violence. The villagers refused to assist, wouldn't even go near the property. The case was closed in silence. One missing, one institutionalized. Months passed. Then, one foggy morning, a local hunter found a dog sitting on the porch of an abandoned house at the edge of the forest. It watched him silently. When he whistled, it didn't move, just kept watching. The hunter left quickly, told his wife that night. It looked like it was waiting, not for food, for someone it used to be. The house still stands, empty, but sometimes, late at night, a shape is seen moving behind the boarded windows, pacing, crawling, whimpering. And if you walk close enough, you might hear scratching, or breathing, or a voice that sounds just like your own, calling you by name.